TVGrace presents the inexpressible words of God, the gospel of grace, on the lips of Jesus Christ man. Abba, Father.
Well, God utilizes men, right? There is nothing rare. God never speaks with anyone. He always utilizes someone. In this case, for me, it's an honor that he utilizes me to speak with you. I'm saying, as long as I am in the foundation. If not, he is not speaking to you. I am. You know that Isaiah says that my word, the prophet said, my word, I sent it forth, and it shall accomplish that which I please, and be prosperous. She will not turn back void. But that's if that's his word. If it isn't his word, you hear it, and it enters through here, and it exits out the other ear, and you continue the same. But if it's his word, it has that characteristic that she's going to enter, and without your help having entered your mind, she begins to work within us, the believer. It takes its time, and not because she takes time, but because we are all different and we react different to the truth and in periods of time. There are some that obtain things quicker than others, depending on the formation that you have as a person. There are folks that are excellent that the word falls, and they're fantastic. It works quickly. Others, they know it, but it doesn't work quickly. Now they know it, and little by little, it continues to act. That's why we preach this word, because this word does wonders. In all places we go to, we see wonders, from healings, marvelous things, provision, many things, marvelous things in the lives of people. And that's why we want to fill the world with this knowledge. If it was a religion, there are many, I would have time to dedicate myself to other things. Well, today we have a conference that's very edifying for our time, the prosperity of God's children here on earth. It brings results. The prosperity of God's children begin by giving. It begins sowing. Jesus said it's more blessed to give than to receive. So then we have in our centers, internationally speaking, people that have issues with the word tithing. The word tithing comes from 10. In other words, you seek 100 apples that God gives you, because God gives the apples, and God says, how many apples do you have? Well, I have here 100 apples. Well, God says, I want you to take 90 for yourself and set aside 10 for me. And with those 90 apples, I want you to eat, sustain yourself, clothe yourself, and house yourself. Now 10, leave it for my government, so that my government here on earth can function. Every government needs of the taxes of their citizens to function. For an example, here in the USA, the government doesn't take 10, it takes 36% of your check. Now, the government from heaven only asks for 10. A measure, and then whatever you give, that's just, then the offerings come. Well, you put aside your tithing, and now the offerings that, well, for an example, I have bishops that take the tithe of the countries, but then they double up. If it's 200, they're going to send 200 of tithe, then 200 of an offering. 200 is what you should give. Now, the other 200 is for a greater prosperity. Now, there are others that their eyes just want to fulfill, and they give exactly 10%. And when they give a check, they give $100 with 6 cents. Or $100 with 8.56, exactly like that. And instead of rounding it off, 100 with $8 so they don't go through hassles of adding, they are very legalistic. It has to be 10%. No, it can be more, not less, but it can be more. Now, I'm not saying that. Let's look at it, first of all, where this begun. But let's see it first in the scriptures so you can have evidence. And if you have some type of covetousness or greed in your flesh, you can begin to release yourself from that based on the word that's not going to return void. Because what it's going to do is going to prosper you, or it's going to take from you, depending on how you see it. Let's go to Malachi so you can see the principle of God. Malachi chapter 3. Before Matthew, where the history of Jesus Christ begins, you will find Malachi, the last minor prophet, spoke about tithing, and he gives us evidence Malachi chapter 3, verse 6. You can take notes of these verses so you can study them at home. Always we've had sheeps that are jumping sheeps, that they don't, because it's about finances. So they love the revelation. They love to come to church and hear the songs, and they love to have a comfortable seat and that the air blows on them. They love all of that. And the sheets and the CDs that we hand them out, but when it's about giving, they are hard. Or they give a little bit of change, or they pretend they're going to give something. Yes, there are people like that. But let's look at it biblically so we can see what we're going to do with those people, with those that don't want to give, having. It says, verse 6, chapter 6, for I, Jehovah, or I, the Lord, I say the Lord now, but before he was called Jehovah. But Paul, which I imitate, doesn't mention that name. The word Jehovah never came out of his mouth because he knew that Jehovah changed his name to Jesus Christ, which is the name above every name. You shouldn't say Jehovah any longer. Are we here? Do you receive that? For the love of you, I say that. I don't dare say that. It's like Paul. Paul was called Saul of Tarsus. But when the revelation came, his name changed to Paul. Now it's the Apostle Paul, not Saul of Tarsus. Verse 6 says, for I, the Lord, do not change. Say, do not change. He changed covenant, but when it's about financing, the covenant is for the spirit. But since we're speaking about finances, it's flesh. It's flesh in the Old Testament, it's flesh in the New. So therefore, he doesn't have to change his measure, because in the Old Covenant, it produced benefits to the Jewish nation. Well, now it's going to produce an effect in the Gentiles. When we speak about pistos, the money, realis, there are many names they give the dollar. So then it says like this, for I, the Lord, do not change. Therefore, you are not consumed, O sons of Jacob. Yet from the days of our father, or your fathers, you have gone away from my law and ordinances, and you have not kept them. Return to me, and I will return to you, saith the Lord of hosts. But you said, in what ways shall we return? And then there's a question, will a man rob God? Yet you have robbed me. You can't rob God, but if you rob the church, it's as if you're robbing God. Will a man rob God? Well, you have robbed me. And you said, and what have we robbed you? He said, in tithing and offering. Say, tithing and offering. or tithe and offering. There are two forms of prospering, tithe and offering. Curse it with a curse, for you have robbed me, even this whole nation. Bring all the tithe into the storehouse, that they may be food in my house, and try me in this, saith the Lord of hosts, if I will not open for you the windows of heaven and pour out for you such blessing that they shall be no room. And I will rebuke the devourer. In those days he was alive, because we are talking about the old covenant, for your sake, so that he will not destroy the fruit of your ground, nor shall the vine fall bare. And all nations will call you blessed, for you will be a desirable land, saith the Lord of hosts. Desirable land. You know why there are folks that live in the United States? Because the American, it's a sower. They were affected by great evangelists like Spurgeon, many evangelists that arrived here to this nation, and they taught them how they should care for other nations. But we have migrants here. But with the migrant, you're not a migrant according to the gospel. That's why it's called the United States. The Americans arrived here. The Italians arrived here. Everybody arrived here. No one can say in this USA, I arrived first. Well, you arrived first, but you arrived. I came after, but I arrived. So what happens? In the USA, you always see those big churches that raise up millions of dollars thinking of sending out missionaries to other countries to help and bring the gospel. So since they've sown their seed, tithing and offering, well, this converted into a powerful nation. And this nation sows when there's catastrophes. Who do they ask help for? The USA. When there are political problems, who do they ask for help? The USA. When you had a need to change from your country because in your country they had no jobs, where did you come? To the USA. Everyone wants to arrive to the USA because here they sow principles of sowing and reaping. So if we want to be desirable land, people that speak good about us, we have to be sowers, because the power comes when you sow. That's why it's much more a blessed thing to give than to receive, because when you give, you feel good. The one that feels bad is he that receives. Now, when catastrophes happen, and there are storms and earthquakes, whether that takes place first in poor countries, why it doesn't happen in the U.S. so we stop sending money out to another countries? Because those that don't have what they have will be taken from them, and he that has will be given more. God is not going to send money or finances to Haiti because they don't sow. You sow and you will reap more. Haiti doesn't give out nothing. Why give to your country? Well, God gives more to the U.S., more here. But God is unjust that he gives so much here. But it's because they're sowing, and God works by the sowing. Why are we making changes in Cuba, in Honduras, in Guatemala? We are causing change in El Salvador. Why? Because I've sown traveling. When I travel there, whomever I found there, they had to give me nothing. I would pay the hotel. I would pay my trip over there. I paid for everything, and I would leave funds for the radio program, money for the location. Martin, could you send me a sound system? And I would sow everything. So I sow. So now I am reaping from God, and I am reaping because those are principles. And when you educate folks and you put principles in their mind, you take the matter that give me, give me, give me, always saying giving and never san toma. When someone is giving you a lot, begin to worry. I don't like this. They're giving me too much. I have to break this cycle and turn it upside down, reverse it. I have to, because that of giving me, in here, the U.S., there's a law that's called welfare. And the Latins fell in that trap. And how sad that in my nation, the Puerto Ricans loved it. And the black Americans, they've loved it. Oh, they did business. Well, there were folks that will go buy drugs. Give me 2 bags of heroin. Here, take 2 bags. Here, you take coupons? And a lot of you didn't apply because you didn't qualify. But they used to love, they would give them $300 of coupons bi-weekly to buy food. So now what was needed is that the husband say to the wife, leave the house and, and they would divide families so they can give more benefits. And that caused a disaster. That was a deceiving move that the U.S. launched out to different ethnic groups that got here to be humiliated, and idiots began to receive, and the moral statures began to weaken. Don't never ask, what can the nation do for you? As Kennedy said, ask what you can do for the nation, because that puts you above and not under. When I begun this ministry, imagine, I had nothing. Well, I'm going to ask. And I used to work with the Southern Baptists, and I had connections all around New England that I would send a letter, and there were many folks that love what I do, and they can send me offerings. The temptation came because I know if I would have sent a letter, I could receive $2,000 or $3,000. And suddenly I heard the voice of God, don't treat this word this way. Best that you sell what you have. I had a Rolex, I sold it. I had a Mercedes-Benz, I sold it. I had a house and I sold it. And I had many televisions home like this and I sold them. And I stood with the small television. I invested. And then for this ministry, I had $15,000 left. I gave $10,000 to the church in Puerto Rico, and I brought 40 here, and I spent them here. Don't be bothered if I live now in a mansion and I drive in a BMW. No, because I've sown. It would be bad if I would not sow, and it's always give me thanksgiving. And you see nothing. No. If you sow all that men sow, he shall reap. These are principles of sowing. I gave my life, my reputation. I gave everything. This is the word of truth. Doesn't matter what happens. I'm going to share it with someone, and somebody's going to understand me. And if I have to give everything I have, I'm going to sow it. But I have to reap. And it wasn't from day to night. I was criticized by my family. Look at this man with kids, 40 years old, living in his brother-in-law's house. That's just for a little while I begin to know Miami. In a little room, 5 of us sleeping in a little room. I would sleep under the bed, my wife beside me, and the 3 would sleep here and there because the air conditioner, it was very hot. We could have slept in the kitchen, but in that little room there was AC. But say that is temporary. Say what I am going through is temporary, because I am going to sow and I am going to reap, and I will improve my entire life. Principles of prosperity. Well, then we see that the scriptures say, try me in this, say in tithing. Try me. I open the windows of heaven. I've never seen windows in heaven. But this is figurative. What it's trying to say, I'm going to throw the doors out the window. I am going to release. I am going to bless. It says, try me. But notice that it says, and this I don't change. In grace, it's the same situation. Try me so you can see. But then there are these rebellious people out there, speaking worldwide, that say, no, tithing is of the law. If he says, I don't change in this, why does it say I don't change in this? Because before the law, 430 years before, he used the same method with Abraham. Abraham gave the tithing to Melchizedek. Moses had not yet arrived. His little basket had not yet been created. So then he says, in this do not change. I have not changed. So will it change in the new covenant? Take a look to see what 1 Corinthians chapter 16 smells like. First letter to the Corinthians, I spoke to you of Genesis 430 years before the law. I spoke to you about the scripture, the law, and now let's go to the new covenant in grace. First letter to the Corinthians, chapter 16. I have my doctorate at the office. I can bring it here and break it in pieces. If any one of you can prove that I have fault in what I am saying. Now, look at what this smells like. Chapter 16 of the first letter to the Corinthians. A good understander with very few words understands. It says, now concerning the collection for the saints. Now, this ain't St. Judas and nor St. Thomas. Saints, plurally, it's said to those that love the Lord. You know, terrible believers, good believers. Yes, saint. What it means is someone that's separated too. It isn't what Rome sold you, the Catholic Church, that they say, oh, these people that behave really well, oh, that man is holy. No, a saint is everyone. The word saint, what it means is to put aside for something that's of a good cause. David was a saint. Moses, a tremendous saint. He killed, he did many things. Judith was a saint to kill the saint, to go against the saint. But here it says, regarding the offering for the saints, as I have given order to the churches of Galatia, so you must do also. Talking about churches, not synagogues, the churches and synagogues. On the first day of the week, what does that sound like? Every first day of the week, that of every check that you're going to receive, the Lord tells you, try me in this, put something aside. No, it doesn't give. I have rent. I have the vehicle. Well, you don't want to try me. No, it's because I doubt. I am full of doubt that you're not going to prosper me. Well, continue to receive it like that. You're not going to prosper me. Keep believing that. But this is an apostolic order. Everyone, if the son works, the daughter works, the father works, the mother works, even the child. You know what I've seen? That our super race loves the soul, because since they don't know what the value of money is, what they like is the principle. There are parents that teach their children to tithe from a very young age. You have to teach your children that so you can kill from a very young age the spirit of covetousness and greed. Because if not, you teach them to always receive for me, for me, for me. And if something is left over, it's for me. And then their hard cement is like pudding next to them. because then they're bad with their wife. They don't like to gift anyone with anything. At birthday, they hand over a card with nothing in it. The worst gifts, those folks give them out. But people that know the principle, they love to give. So if they like to give, the angels say, we have to provide. The angels are like that. It says, every first day of the week, let each one of you lay aside something as God has prospered you, so that when I come, then there should be no collection of offerings. You know, none of these companies had opened back in the day, stock markets. Well, they could not sow back in the day to send through Western Union. And since Paul said there aren't boats here, there were no planes here, there were no travel agencies. No, it was, you would have to take a boat, and it would take long, 3 to 6 months to get to a place. So they would put it aside, because there are people that put it aside, but they start to eat it. What they have left is one apple, and they've chewed on it. You know what it is, an apple that's chewed on? It's hollow when you seek it. What's left is there's nothing there. It says, putting it aside. So when I arrive, that is the apostle. This is the apostolic offering. So when he arrives, we don't have to take up a collection. And when I come, whomever you approve by your letter, I will send to bear your gift to Jerusalem. That was in the beginning. They would take it to Jerusalem. But when he saw that Peter would take the offerings, he says, I'm not going back to Jerusalem. But if it is filling that I go also, they will go with me. Those are principles that come from back in the day. Paul was like that. He would order the churches because Paul was a Jew, and he knows what the Lord said. I don't change in this, what God said in the old covenant. And he continued in that pattern, the same pattern. Every first day of the week, everyone puts something aside. That's marvelous, because in the way that you honor God, God is going to honor you. He will never abandon you. Not that needs will not arise, they will come, but what you're not going to be able to understand is how the heck I've been able to manage. And you are standing, and you are dressing, and you have your automobile, and it may not be the latest model, but you are standing, and a family member arrives, you feed them, you treat them well. You're always reigning. You don't know how, but you're reigning in life, right? Right? Well, so then in Hebrews chapter 7, there is a recipe for those that say, no, that tithing is of the law. Let's look at Hebrews, the letter to the Hebrew. There was one here. It was a man that we had among us when we loved him tremendously, as we love all of you. But when it was time to tithe, he would say to those beside him, that's of the law. So he would not give, and he wouldn't allow for others to give. He would say, that is of the law. A year contaminating people that were beside him. While I would educate from here, he would educate them from over there. That's of the law. Those are root of bitterness that, begin to affect. There are people that, they're very evil. So one day I tightened up with a topic like this, and he felt intimidated, and he raised up his hand, and I said, yes, brother. He said, no, that's of the law. And what do you recommend? How are we going to sustain our building here the expense, because he that works from the altar should eat from the altar. What do you recommend? That of tithing is very little. That's very little. According to how one has prospered, what 10? Let's not be hard. Let's give 25%. And I said, brother, I appreciate that you want to give me more money, but the Lord says 10%. And then if you want to give something else, in addition, it's an offering. So I said, and how about you, brother? What measure have you given? Well, I've never given anything here. Oh, Father, what is to say that you recommend a higher measure? And then I discovered that he convinced 7 or 8, and they would gather at his house, and they grew like to 15. And their topic was the tithing is of the law. The tithing is of the law. So then they could not have a congregation because they had no funds to cover the expense, because no one would give anything. And they wanted a radio program, but because the measure of 10 was so little and you have to give a lot, it's true, you got to give more, but no one gave anything, so they couldn't do anything. So all of a sudden, they went away because they could not even serve a cup of coffee. Look. Notice those spirits, because there are people that they begin to speak about a certain topic, but they don't look around at the rest of the truth. How long have you been here? Are you hot when you congregate? And when you receive the study, we give you a sheet with all the verses. Before, we would have meals, or we would go out and there would be a desk with different things, and you see him eating everything and enjoying the AC. But when we would say, let's lift up an offering or tithing, that's of the law. Oh, what a spirit, right? Now, Hebrews 7, receive you are an understander. Look at verse 1, so you can prosper and can arrive to where God wants you to arrive to receive the benefits. It says, for this Melchizedek, king of Salem, priest of the Most High God, met Abraham returning from the slaughter of the kings and blessed him. And to him Abraham appointed a tithe before the law. Abraham appointed a tithe before the law. He that tells you that the tithe is of the law, Abraham existed 430 years before the law, and Abraham tithe. But now, who gave that measure to Abraham? That was a measure that God put in the heart of the father of faith as a good measure. There were no prophets then. It says he is first, by translation of his name, King of Righteousness, and also King of Salem, and that's King of Peace. Without mother or father, without genealogy, having neither beginning of days or end of life, but resembling the Son of God. See how great this man was, to whom Abraham the partridge gave the tithing of all things. And verily, they that are of the sons of Levi, now that goes to the law, that's speaking of the law, have a commandment to take tithe of the people according to the law, that is, of their brethren. Through these also are descendants of Abraham. But this man who does not have his descendant from them received tithing from Abraham, and blessed he that had the promise. It is beyond dispute that the greater shall serve, or the minor shall serve the greater. And one case, tithes are received by mortal, it says, and the one case, tithes are received by mortal men. One might even say that Levi himself, who received tithe, paid tithe through Abraham. So even Levi in the law that received tithing, tithe. Let's read an exhortation in Colossians quickly, after the book of Philippians. and before Thessalonians, Colossians chapter 3. Are we all there? Verse 5 through 7. Therefore, put to death your members which are on the earth: fornication, uncleanness, passions, evil desires, and covetousness, which is, what is covetousness? It's idolatry. Do you know that those that are in idolatry will not inherit the kingdom of heaven? Covetousness. So then in the ministry, there are people that their lives have changed, but in this, they don't support. You know that I've always spoke to you about a man that was very prosperous and God removed him from here. He was very prosperous, but he gave the crumbs. I don't even think he gave a 1%. God removed them from here. And you know why God allows for these conferences? Because this is like a fan for the love of you so you can leave. Because he that receives a lot will receive a lot. But the more you know, the worse it's going to be for you. In other words, instead of living in prosperity, you living in a trashy home. There are people that don't have any problems with this. Sometimes they don't have the understanding of what tithing is, so they are waiting to understand. While they don't understand, they give from their heart and they give more than a tenth. But then after they understand, they put tithing so much, the offering so much, or they'll put for television this much and for the apostles so much. I've seen envelopes. They're very specific, and I imagine that the angels are very specific with them also, because with the rod in which you measure, you will be measured. But worldwide, those that are watching me through internet, because there are many congregations that congregate, the pastors should not fear speaking of this, so those people could leave, because an apple that's rotted affects others that are generous, and people that are naive think that everyone that sits here is okay. Like women that think that because they're men a part of this ministry, they think they're good men. Well, the pastor, and then things go wrong. I thought he was a good man because I saw him singing and praising. Listen, not everything that shines is gold. Listen, this is as the parable of Jesus in the days of his flesh, that a man went out to fish and he launched the net and he asked for help because it was full of fish. But then the man sits in a corner and opens up the nest or the net and he throws out the bad fish and keeps the good. All principles are like that. There are people that arrive here that are excellent. Sometimes they have a bad baggage, but when they get here, they redeem themselves from those attitudes and become marvelous people. But not only men, but women also. There are men that arrive here and they see beautiful women that they say, wow, what a beautiful woman. And then this works on both sides. Everything has its time, its principles, because God fishes and he pulls in and he brings in. You know how many thousands of people have come through this ministry? But there are others that the angels say, Jose Luis don't know what he has there. And I've tried and tried and tried, and we give them the word and we greet them properly. And the day least expected, they go and talk against us. And they're good also because they're needed, because we need persecution, because persecution is one of the symbols of prosperity. Jesus says there's no one during his time here on earth, there's no one that gives something for me, house, land, offerings, money, that I myself will make certain that they receive 100-fold in this time with persecution and then the eternal life. That's before he died. After he died, then the measure of 100-fold, it's very little. After the cross, you will receive much more abundantly. So blessed in this moment, let's ask that the deacons come forward, and we planned it this way, to raise the offering at the end. It's not that I forgot. So you can put it to practice and you can begin to be obedient. Take your offering and your tithe, whatever you've separated, according to how you've prospered, according to what you have and not according to what you don't, and propose to sow to the Lord. Father, I receive this word, does not turn back void, but it will be prospered according to its purpose. If it's your word, bless it. If it's not your word, don't do anything. Let it fall to the ground. But if it is, you will see the results in your life and in all of your future. Nothing you will lack.